Live. Wow.
Hey, so I've had a rough week this week.
Mm-hmm.
That 430 that I got the camshaft for,
Yep.
I had to put the oil pan on 3 times.
Oh,
3 times. First time was my own fault. I left the oil slinger out. It was sitting on the table, and I'm like, oh, crap.
I've done that.
And so then I put it on the second time, and I don't know if you know, Buick big blocks have like a really tough time with oil pan clearance because it uses the front part of the pan essentially as like part of the windage tray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, so it was hitting the pan. So then I'm like, I pull it off, clearance it, put it back on, pour in my 6 quarts of break-in oil. It's got a pinhole in the bottom of the pan.
Oh,
You gotta be kidding me, man.
that's brutal.
I
That's
know.
brutal.
I know.
Yeah. For me, it was I did the valve or the load spreader for the wife's car, and I didn't check to see if the clearance for the new rocker arm bolts would clear. And I started it up, and I'm like, oh, dude, this thing's got a rod knock. I even took the valve cover off and everything, dude. It was hitting the valve cover. It was a brutal, brutal weekend. So yes, I'm right there with you.
Oh, dude, I just like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I got to find another pan. And luckily, the guy that's getting the thing, he's like, I got a brand new pan. You want me to send you the brand new pan and the gasket I got for it? I'm like, I sure do.
Yes, send it now.
Please, please. Yeah. So he's like, yeah, it's coming your way overnighted. I'm like, okay, we didn't have to overnight it, but okay.
You know that I have a decent hardcore tech at 8 o'clock today too. So it's a
Sweet.
good one.
Well,
Yeah, something everyone can do.
I'm gonna run down the list. Uncle
Sure.
Squirrel's still blaming squirrels.
Always.
Dean Stevenson's in here.
Mm.
Dr. Art's Hot Rod Rehab. I haven't seen Dr. Art in a couple of weeks because he's part of our lemons crew, and we haven't been doing lemons because it's literally going to have to. I got to take the motor and train him back out.
Oh.
Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat from Northeast Dragway, and Aaron Germanson. I think I got it right this time. Where's Buick Smith? I haven't seen him. We are live now. And there's the wife.
Yeah. What's up, wifey? I can see her. So, yes.
Yeah. What's she doing? Typing on her phone then?
Yeah.
Bill McKyska's in here. The one-eyed cat, which is Don English.
Nice.
Mohawk 62. Hello, everyone. Jason's garage. He's in. What? Jason, you're in Tennessee. Man.
Oh, so am I.
Hit me up. Terrence Seymour. And hey, guys. How you doing? Let's see. Two Hacks Jeff is in the house. And Jeff, are you doing your wintertime project? Are we going to do the EZ302? I'm hoping so. Let's see. Blaze Garage is in the house. What's up, Blaze? Let's see. Rob's Rods and Streetcars, Dust Devil Garage, Brian Brinker, and then Wendy English, of course. Buff's Garage. Kim's Fixes Things is here. Let's see. Crash's Roadrunner Garage. I'm here. And yes, we are. All right, cool. We got to do that EZ302. That's going to be cool.
Cool.
And this is something that I've been wanting to do for like a long time. And Two Hacks Jeff and I have kind of got a plan going. I'm not going to let you in, but it is a Chevrolet product.
Oh.
So, yeah. Tom Brown is here. Hello, everyone. I can't stay out heating water for oil frac site, trying to get some more of that American oil out of the ground so we can burn it. Have a great one, guys. Yeah, you better keep that on the DL or somebody's going to be shutting you down soon.
Right? Yeah, keep it quiet.
Yeah. Frank Parks is in the house. Hey, everyone from Somerville, Georgia. I wonder if it's warm in Georgia today because it was awfully cold here today.
Dude, it was nice. Actually, you know what? Here's what I liked is that I was able to drive the Dart. I was in Ashland today, and I drove the 69, and I was able to crank the heater up, did it California style, and had the window down. It was beautiful.
Huh. Well, the un-California style was that you probably could drive straight through there without having to slow down or stop.
That's correct.
I traveled 120 miles today. It took me 2 hours. Oh, heaven forbid.
Right. It's not 2 hours for 15 miles, you know?
Oh, man. Man is a little shit, huh? What is he talking about? Did he say anything else up here? Guess
I don't
not.
know.
He's probably talking about the weather. It's cold. Yeah, it's definitely cold here today. So, big things. You have anything new happen at work today or this week, Shane? Probably
Yes.
something you can talk about.
No, nothing I can talk about.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's too bad. So I had to take my oil pan off 3 times. It's out the garage with the oil pan off.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
other than that, where's some tech questions?
Yeah.
We need some techity tech here.
I got another one too. One thing I can talk about is that I'm doing that. It's a bell housing adapter for the Slant 6, and
Oh,
that's actually coming along pretty good. And I just ordered uh, either one of 1993, 94, 95. That's still a hydraulic style A500, so it's going to have only one power going to it. So that will just be for the lockup. So it's going to shift 1, 2, 3, 4, and then fourth will be a lockup. So I'm still going to use the same actuator that I have right now that's done by the speedometer. So yeah, I'm actually getting that already, and I'm starting to get the part made. I'm gonna try to make it at a 1/2 inch, but I think it's going to end up about 625. But it's going to be really nice. It's going to be much smaller than the other one. The other one's an inch thick, and it thing's heavy, man. So I'm going to make it out of aluminum. It's going to be cool, man. I can't wait.
well, it's cool that you got a bell housing adapter for a Slant 6 to fit the small block Dodge. So
Yeah,
any small block Dodge transmission is fair game, right? A manual, automatic, it doesn't matter.
exactly. In fact, I'm adapting it so that way you can run manual also. So it's going to have the sleeves so you can press in the bushing for it. So it's gonna fit everything. Yeah, it's gonna
Oh,
be
sweet.
yeah, it's gonna be nice. And in fact, I'm gonna look for someone who's got a stick shift. You know, I've got a TKX, but I don't want to put it in my car. But I want to look for someone who's got a stick shift, and I might just give one to see fit and finish how it works. You know,
Yeah. Well, TKX would be kind of like an overkill for
100%.
Slant 6. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you need something that's like very little rotating mass, right? T5 ish is what you need to
Or
start
even
thinking
less
of.
than that. Yeah, get like one of those S10s or a Dodge D50. Remember those things?
Right,
That
right,
would
right. I
yeah.
don't know if did the D50s have the Borg Warner T10 or T5 in them.
No, it had a 5-speed though, because my very first vehicle was a Dodge D50, and it had a 5-speed in it, and it was good. It was nice, evenly spaced, and it was a low horsepower type of engine. So yeah, it would work really good and something like that.
Oh, so Clayton's Toolbox says, I'm having my new 331 Ford balanced for my Pinto. Internal versus external balance. Any tips?
Always go internal. Always.
Yeah, well, your bearings last a lot longer internal balance, right?
Absolutely.
Um, Otherwise known as neutral, right?
That's
You
correct.
you
Yes.
go to this machine shop, you want to neutrally balance this, so don't get too wrapped up in it. But really, all it is the parts themselves are balanced. They're not relying on a weight external of the interior of the engine. So, like
Yep.
your harmonic dampener with an offset weight, like 28 ounce or whatever, and then your flywheel, same thing.
Hmm.
But 331 Ford is probably my favorite small block Ford combo. I always like 4-inch bore, and that's a 3.25-inch stroke. That is the number. I mean, there's a reason why Grumpy Jenkins Vega ran so good. I know it wasn't a Ford, but it was a 331, same bore, same stroke,
Yep.
right? Um, Such a good combination. That is a really good combination.
Yeah, and another reason for I always say internal is the closer you get the weights to the center of the crankshaft, the less you're going to have as far as crank twisting. So the farther the weights are, like when they're bolted on this end and this end, as far as externally balanced, you're going to have a lot more forces working against each other. So if you can get those weights closer in, and that's why fully counterweighted cranks run better for high RPM, because that way the weights are closer to the center and evenly spread out. So yes, always go internal and get the weights as close as possible to the center, is evenly spaced.
Well, Tom Brown says here, did have one question. Maybe I'll have to watch the answer later. But is there any advantage to a certain engine combination, bore and stroke combination, or RPM range to run a 47 or 4732 cam swap?
No. I would bore and stroke combination is a whole different subject. The 4723 swap, all that is going to be is nicer on the rod bearings. Now, Some people say it'll gain a horsepower here. Some will say it'll gain a little less torque. It'll make this and that. I've seen all these things on the dyno, and the only thing I've ever seen is that it's just better on harmonics, it's better on the rod bearings, and it's just better on bearings in general. So that's the reason
if
why.
it's better on the bearings, you would have to assume that it is probably, it's got some power there because it's less friction somewhere.
There's less
Right.
harmonics exactly in it somewhere.
But this is such a broad question to ask
exactly.
because what's the
Two separate
purpose of the
questions.
engine, this and that? I mean, bore and stroke combinations are okay. So you want big bore, short stroke for high RPM power, right?
Yep. Square
If
bore
you-
for like something both, both directions,
right, and or you get
under square for like a slant six,
yeah, a square engine actually works pretty good in just about both caveats.
Yep.
Or instances, I guess. And then the what is it, under square or over square?
Over square is where
Square is a small bore, big stroke, right?
that's under square. Yes.
Okay.
When it's under, that means it's the thing underneath is bigger, and then when it's over, that means the thing over is bigger. That's just the way I
Well, I
remember.
always confuse those two.
Yeah, I know.
I
Yeah,
honestly
me
do.
too.
But yeah, those are your workhorse engines. Those are your daily grind, gas mileage kind of decent stuff.
That's correct.
So, well, and then here's Lars down here. Lars popped in. LP94. Happy Wednesday, y'all. Hey, Lars, I'm supposed to be stopping by seeing you guys sometime this week. I'm actually crushing it on time right now, trying to get this 4:30 together because I got a deadline. This guy wants to come pick it up next week, and I got to get this thing done. And it has been kicking my butt all day like a soccer ball. So, I don't think I'm gonna make it this week.
Yeah.
I was supposed to come pick up the monkey bike from them, but I guess they're wanting to do some interesting stuff with the monkey bike. So maybe I'll call them and see what they're doing.
Nice.
Let's see. Michael Schmidt says 833 mid late 70s truck 3-speed with a tall overdrive, heavy duty, simple adapter. I think I'm assuming that you're talking about that Slant 6 combination.
That'll work. Yeah. But
that 833 is going to hog up some power that thing doesn't make.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. I mean, it can be done. I would get a transmission that has, like, say, some sort of ATF in it. That's going to be a nice, very little parasitic loss type of transmission.
Like 80s manual transmissions. Those are the ones where the engines were as anemic as possible, and they had to have a transmission that was had very little parasitic loss, right? But they're also not very strong. Well, I guess I can't say that because that T5 is surprisingly takes a serious beating. It was marginal behind a 5-liter Mustang, and they lasted for quite a few hard miles on them.
Right.
Because I don't think not one of those drove off the lot and it was an easy day, right?
No. It was a beating right off the bat.
That's what I thought. So. All right. John Wilburn's in the house. He's saying hello, gentlemen.
What's up, John?
Obviously not talking to us, but
yeah, right.
Let's see. All right. So everybody's Clayton's Toolbox says the machinist only asked for one piston, rod, and crank. Is that normal?
Yes. Well.
To count the bob weight, generally you're looking at more than just one rod and piston, though.
If
you can work it off of one if they're all the same.
Exactly. Is that he's basically just going straight off of bob weight. He's assuming that you've already balanced all the pistons and the rods together. But I can tell you right now, I did a video where checking to see if a drop in, those piston rod combos or drop ins, and they're really not. They're close, but they're definitely not. They were off by maybe 10 grams or something like that. And to me, that's too much. But normally, that's what I see. A machinist is only going to ask for one piston, one rod, and then bearings, and then usually a pin.
So that's what I was just going to bring up. There's usually more to the list. There's bearings, at least one rod bearing, one your whole set of main bearings, and then the usually they ask for the dampener and the flywheel or flex plate.
Yeah, but he's probably just establishing a bob weight, and most clips nowadays are like in the 1 gram range. they're usually going to ask for a pin. I don't see why they're not asking for that, and the rings, because the rings can range wildly, and that can make a huge difference. So
yeah, and that's all. A lot of it is, well, the rings. You'd always think, oh, one's longer than the other. No, they're all pretty much the same, and it's just when they're in the bore, they're that much different, so it looks like they're, oh, this one's longer than the other one. No, it's usually your bore is that far off. But and that doesn't really make that much of a difference. Generally, when you're looking at forged pistons, your bore can be off pretty damn far because they grow so much.
That's correct. Yeah.
But let's see. Rob's Rods and Street Cars asks, what balancer is better between a fluid dampener to the old school type?
Well, I have my opinion, so I will say my opinion. I've had a fluid dampener, and they are, at least for me, now this is just, I've only seen this with my race car. This is actually the car that I used to drive in drag race. Did you notice how whenever I was in the pits, I would start it up and drive around quite a bit before I would go out into the track? It's because I had to get that fluid dampener nice and hot before it actually started to work. And I could actually feel the vibration. If I had to fire it up and go out there and do a burnout, I would feel the vibration in the car, like literally like the engine shaking itself until that fluid dampener was hot. For me, if it's an internally balanced engine, I now went to an ATI style, which is
exactly what I do.
Yeah, I went to an ATI style or an old school style. Now you just got to keep an eye on the rubber of those. But the fluid dampener will work for like a street car that's going to be driven and has hot. It works just fine. Just get the thing hot. But if it's in a race car, I would run an ATI or the old school.
Well, there's actually another option in there. Is TCI used to make one called the Rattler.
Yes, I was just going to get to that one.
It's a whole different deal. Make that?
Yes, we still make it, and it's there's a lot of physics involved in that one.
Well, isn't that one like bearings that kind of like they balance semi-truck tires, where it's like kind of like a bearing or a ball bearing inside that housing?
Yeah, there's many of them. There's I think there's 6 in there, and what they're doing is they're counteracting. It's a ball bearing inside of another wheel, and what it does is, as our harmonic goes, it will rock inside there with the centripetal force. If it feels a force, it will basically move, back and forth in there. And it uses formula. It's a Formula One style of dampener, so that way it takes some of the harmonics out, and it works really good. The reason why it's called a Rattler is when you shut it off, what does it do? Because all those little balls in there rattle around. Yeah. That's actually the reason why it gets the name.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Mostly old parts. Ron Warren, is there an advantage to using copper core plug wires and non-resistor plugs in a carburetor breaker point ignition application?
Go for it.
Well, he's asking, is there an advantage to using it?
Oh, no.
I would have to say no.
Only the radio will hear it, really.
Yeah, I guess. And if you don't have a radio, that's not even an issue. Because I'm pretty much to the point now where if I have an old hot rod, I like to just listen to that thing cruise down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a disadvantage to it, but I don't think there's any real gain to it.
No.
Resistor plugs actually put a pretty good load on the coil.
Mm-hmm. And they discharge faster.
What's that?
And it seems to discharge a little harder.
Oh, because there is a load. And that's the thing that I'm, like, if there's the only thing that you're looking at for a non-resistor plug is the gap itself. And it doesn't take much to arc a gap like that. Usually it's like probably 10,000 volts would arc that gap pretty good. Mm-hmm. I think to make the coil perform better, I think it really likes those resistor plugs. I really think they do.
Yeah.
But I imagine high cylinder pressure. If you have high cylinder pressure, that's where that non-resistor plug would actually shine. Because the higher the cylinder pressure, the more resistance between that gap, right? And you no longer need a resistor plug.
I've only noticed it because I've never really done much as far as like power adder, like with the turbo with the non-resistor resistor plug. I just noticed it in the radio. It's just that's the difference. Right. Yeah, the buzz. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so Doug Narden checked in. Mopar Al swinging in the gate here.
What's going on, Mr. Mopar Al?
I haven't seen you in a while, Mr. Mopar Al, ever since No Name Nationals. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox. Are there any good economical ways to weigh a car at home? Oh yeah, this is easy, man.
Hmm.
You ever go to the Big Love's gas stations and they
Yep.
got a cat scale for semi trucks?
Hmm.
Drive a car up on that sucker.
Yeah, just roll across it.
Yeah,
We actually have one right down the street here in Memphis from Comcams, and it's you can see it when you roll across. It's like for recycling trucks, and you can just get up on it. And I've got four scales. I've got four-wheel scales here at the house. So we weighed our friend's car, and we weighed it with ours, and it was within about 50 pounds. So it's pretty accurate.
yeah, and like the ones I know of, when I was a kid, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest that we had a grain elevator, and they
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
pay these guys based on how much grain they brought across, right?
Hmm.
So they'd weigh you on the way in, then they'd weigh you on the way out, and the difference was what you were carrying, right?
Made you think,
And
yeah.
that grain elevator one was calibrated every year, so they were pretty accurate. So if you got a grain elevator one nearby, swing up there, pay your $2 or whatever, get that sucker weighed. Let's see
Yeah.
here. Michael Schmidt says, is there any difference in
Ooh.
balancing internals for a V8 versus an inline six? I have
Hmm.
heard, but no basis to believe that on an inline balance job, it's less critical, i.e., just balance parts separately.
Well, I can tell you on a slant six, it's basically a neutrally balanced style of engine. So anything inline six, anything that's a four cylinder, also that's something that's inline, even an inline eight. The only thing I do is I balance the pistons to each other and the rods to each other. So I have a big end, little end, and then I make sure everything weighs the same. On a V8 though, you're going to be basically balancing 50% of the weight because one's forcing this one down while this one's coming on the way down. So on a V8, it's a lot different as far as how you're going to balance them because you're going to have a 50% bob weight on one end, 100% on the other. So it's the formula is quite in depth to get it. I mean, it's really simple, but a lot of people mess it up. But on an inline six, you can do that at home with your scale.
Well, that's and I was always told it was because it's the force from the piston is straight down,
That's correct.
always in line.
And
And
there's
then when
one
you're
going
doing
down.
a V8, it's coming from two different sides,
That's right.
right?
It's going like this. Plus, when this one's coming down, this one on this side is coming down, but it's at where it's at. It's at exactly 90 degrees, but it's coming on 90 degrees from this angle. So yeah, that's why the bearings are a little different on a V8 too. That's why you have the parting line, and then you measure this side, and there should be about a thousandths difference. It should be a thousandths tighter straight line, so that when the forces are going down on the pistons, it will grow in the center but close up on the ends.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Doug Narden says truck stop scale is expensive compared weighing at the local grain mill, at least where I'm from.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course it is. They're trying to make money with this scale, right? They got to pay for it for these. And the big deal is the truckers need it to know what their weight is before they hit the road. If they're overloaded, they can deal with it right there. The grain, the local grain mill or elevator or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
they're just going to be cheap because it's essentially been paid for a bazillion times over. But
Yeah.
and it's once you get outside the Midwest, there's not a lot of those.
No, no.
So
Around here, it's just for like recycling. So, yeah.
yeah, Chris Cox says you're 100% on the fluid dampener. He had the
Yep.
same issue. You had to let it get warm.
Yep. Been there, done that.
All right. All right. 29 A bone pickup. My 440 was built with an external balance flex plate and neutral balance dampener. That's what the engine builder said was best.
That's wrong.
I have never heard of anyone doing
Yeah.
that before.
I mean, maybe kind of half-assed the balance, but I've never seen that before. Normally, if you're doing that, you're correcting a problem that was made internally already.
You know what I have seen? I have seen where you take an externally balanced flex plate and they cut the weight off.
I've seen that too. Yeah. Okay. That could be one.
Maybe that's what he's got going on because it wouldn't make any sense that you have a neutrally balanced dampener with counterweight on the. It would just eat the freaking bearings right out of that motor.
Yeah. Especially the
Especially
center one because it would start doing like a
the
jump rope.
thrust would just get chewed.
Yeah. Yeah. That center that on a Mopar, the center is a thrust. and they would just be like a big jump rope eating that thing.
Yeah, especially just like one side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
My 50s flathead Plymouth 6 piston has 4 sets of rings on each piston. Can the skirts be shortened to lighten the pistons and or balance the pistons? Can a one ring be deleted for reduced friction? All right. Yes. And yes.
Yeah. Do you want to do it? No, probably no. Because what are you going to get out of? What are you going to gain for power?
Yeah, it would almost be negligible.
Exactly.
You might have 5 to 10 horsepower, but you could probably find that somewhere else.
Exactly.
Now, if it has 4 sets of rings on each piston, 3 of them are compression, 1 of them is oil, and they have to have an oil ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can lose one of those compression rings without it being an issue. And if they were 5/64ths, what I would do is see if I could find another engine that had a bore similar to that and use because when you're looking at 4, well, they're going to have 3 compression rings, right?
Yeah.
They're most likely all exactly the same type of ring all the way down.
Yeah.
That's how the older stuff was. When you look at newer style engines with like essentially started probably in the 60s with 5/64 rings.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 different types of rings
Yep.
on the engine that has 3 rings. And so on the top, if you've ever looked at the shape of them, the top ring is generally the one that's actually square.
Yep.
The second ring is directional.
That's correct.
It'll have a notch cut in the back of it. So it actually moves down easier than it goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. On yours, they're probably all 3 square. And if you can find something that has a similar bore and it's the same ring thickness, you could use something that would be like a later style rings where you have the 2 different types of rings in there. But I really think you're really not going to find a lot.
No, I would say just in the camshaft alone, or just doing something with the exhaust, tuning that, you gain a lot more by doing that than lightning pistons and whatnot. Because you're not going to RPM that thing really much.
Yeah, and that was kind of the whole idea behind the later 60s engines is that's what they were doing. I mean, before they started really finding power, they just started RPMing the engine, right?
Yeah.
And make more power with camshaft. Then you ask, can the skirts be shortened to lighten the pistons and or balance the pistons? Normally, they don't take anything off the skirts. The skirt actually just holds it straight up and down in the bore. The more skirt you have, theoretically, it's supposed to be the more stable the piston is in the bore.
Yep.
The downside to it is there's more friction surface, right? So
that's correct. Yep.
But when they balance pistons, they normally take it off of the underside of the head, right? So if you've ever had a set done, you took the piston and looked at it from the bottom, and there would be some dimple marks in there where somebody got in there with a drill and generally drilled some out. And all they did was make each piston weigh about the same. And wrist pins, kind of the same thing. What you do is you would stagger wrist pins around with a rod combination that gave you something close, and then you would just take a very minimal amount off of the weight on the rod itself to make it balance.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. So let me see if I can catch up. Which transmission do you want behind your Slant 6?
I'm going to do an A500 this time. I tried a 204R. 204R. I've tried that overdrive. I've tried borrowed a gear vendor from someone with a 904. Just for me, I'm going to try the A500 just because it works really well. It's a 904, and the way that overdrive works, I just like the way the Chrysler transmission shift better than the GM. That's just me personally. So I'm going to go with the A500 my next time. I'm going to give it a shot.
Kim Fix This Thing says another cheap way to get a rough weight is to go to the scrap recycling center. That's a genius idea, Kim. That's right. Because they'll normally, when you scrap metal, they'll throw a bunch of metal. Like say you put it in your truck, they weigh you going across the scale and then weigh you coming out, just like the grain elevator. So that is a good option. Let's see. 2Hack says I use the grain elevator about 2 miles from me to weigh my car. That is on 24 hours. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Does the scale, can you actually see the scale from where you're at, though? Let's see. So Brian Brinker from Dust Devil Garage says, sorry, not tech related, but did you hear Steve Maggs said my car was cool? No, I did not hear that, but I did now.
Yeah, perfect.
If you are you questioning your car's coolness? If that's the case, you should probably be looking at it and saying, okay, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Finish that thing up for next year, the No Name Nationals, and then everybody else will determine if it's cool or not.
There you go. Have you guys decided on sub counts yet, or you guys are still working on that?
We haven't really made it any further than yes, we're having one.
Gotcha.
This is Dust Devil Brian's equivalent of going to the lake with whistling diesel. Yeah, I guess so. So he's geeking out that Steve Maggs says his car is cool. Let's see here. Andy Wood is in here, huh? Man, we are picking up the serious players from YouTube community here.
Nice, good.
Let's see. The engine builder from 29 A-Bone Pickup says he builds sprint car engines. The 440 he built for me is smooth, easy revving.
Yeah, it's probably because the converter then. So they had something with the converter, and that's the reason why he did that. It's the only thing I can think of. Or the flex plate, depending on if it's manual or
yeah, I just can't see how you could get a balanced one on one end and a non-balanced on the other, like a neutral balance, and it not just chew the thrust right out of it.
It like I said, it's got to be with the parts that are being bolted onto the ends of it. That's the only thing I can say.
Huh. Yeah, well, Andy's in here saying it's good to see everyone tonight.
Yeah, it is good to see everyone tonight.
Yeah,
and I don't have any lightning outside.
Yeah, and you have power.
Yeah, and I have power, right?
Yeah. Okay. Andy Wood saying Casper's still MIA. It's depressing at this point. Man, I tell you what, I was talking to John Wilburn the other day, and I said, I might have to get my headers done from my super stock Buick by the guy that is doing Casper's. And then John said, yeah, well, Casper's still over there. And they cost X of the X dollars, right? And I'm like, ooh, man, I'm going to have to make them at home.
That's right.
So, let's see. All right. Danny Boyd says a trip to the scrapyard taught me that my F-150 with me in it is under 4,000 pounds. So that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. So Fab Race Mod repeat. Shane, what's your thoughts on roller cam bearings in an occasional street application?
Is that occasional? Like, is it a race car that you're going to drive onto the street, or is this occasional? Like you're just going to go on the street occasionally with it, and then possibly the track every once in a while. So I'll answer both ways. If you're going to run roller cam bearings, that's usually for high RPM type of deals, and usually you can run them in wet sump systems, but it's usually for a dry sump system. At least that's what I've seen them for and built them for. Roller bearings always are good because you're going to get less friction, but if you're not spinning the thing to over 7,500, it's really not. It's pointless. I don't see that. It would just be a waste of cost, and unless you want something like that, but you'd never really see the benefits of it because of the RPM.
Generally, when you do a roller bearing, it requires a custom cam blank.
That's correct.
It also requires machining the block out and then putting oil restrictors in, so you're not flooding the cam bearing itself.
That is correct, exactly. And because of that, though, by the time you do all that work, most people can do that. We're all capable, probably in this chat, of doing that. But at the exact same time, it just how much do those cost on those roller bearings? And then you're going to be dealing with the 60 millimeter camshaft, and usually, or 55 millimeter cam, and it gets super expensive. So unless you're going to be RPM that thing over 7,500, I wouldn't even mess with it.
John Wilburn says, we think it will go up by 10 subs every time someone asks. He's talking about the no-name national sub requirements. He said, just kidding, it will be at least 500 subs to participate. And that's what we kind of figured is, the 500 number, it wasn't something John and I just made up. That's where YouTube kind of recognizes you as a content creator, right? That's where you get your community tab, and that's where you subsequently become a content creator. We don't see any reason at this point to increase it yet, but we haven't ruled that out. Right. So the whole idea is, if we were to, I mean, let's face it, everybody had a pretty good time at No Name Nationals, except for the people that wanted to hate on it before it even happened. But everyone pretty much had a good time there. If we
Yes.
changed nothing, you would probably have the same dang good time. So
Yeah. Well, I had a thought on this John's here and you're here. What about this? People who were not at the No Name Nationals last year get 500 subs. People who were there last year have to have 1,000. What about that?
it's hard to
I understand.
well, no,
But
it's just hard to track everybody at
mhm,
that point, right? Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes that you guys were unaware of. Like, every person that was in the No Name 500, every person that entered and went through the No Name 500, which is essentially you started a channel that had less than 500 subs and how long you were in there. John used to send an email every day, tracking progress of channels, and it was. Uh, I'm assuming probably pretty daunting for him, because he'd have to go look at every one of these channels and then update it, right?
Yeah.
And there were 60 something channels at one point that were on there. And I think, I want to say like 45 of them graduated. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe 65 of them graduated. I don't remember.
I graduated. Yay.
Yeah.
I got mine.
Colleen saying, thanks for the birthday card. No problem. We did
Yeah.
that for the AHRA just because, well, I know exactly what it's like to be an NHRA member or an IHRA member, because I did that kind of thing. And
Yep.
they didn't send me anything except for
Another check.
yeah,
Another bill.
we need you to pay your bill.
Right.
And
Right.
it's like, oh,
Hey, before you get off of Colleen's question here, or the thanks for you, she posted a picture on Facebook a little while back. It's actually, I think it was yesterday, where there's two rods that were bent and they were broken. And I put on there, that's happened to me before. I wasn't talking about the actual piston rods though. It's a joke.
okay. I guess. Am I reading too little into this, or do I need to be reading a lot more into this?
It's a she knows exactly what I'm talking about, because I posted on there, and it's funny. When you go back over her page and go take a look at it, it's two rods that are being compressed. Think about it, a male rod. It's a joke, man.
Oh, yeah. I got you. When you bent the
There you go.
rod at an extreme angle.
There you go. It was funny.
Buff's Garage, No Name changed my life. I can't wait to go again. Well, I'm glad it did change your life.
Yeah, it was good.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know how. I think it changed a lot of people's lives, to tell you the truth. I know it changed my life. I'm still recuperating from it. It's this, man. That thing took so much time and effort that I had to pretty much stack up everything that was extra and just pile it up to where at the end of the season. And now that's where we're at the end of the season. So I haven't even made a video in probably a month, and that is not normal for me. I just been I gotta get this other stuff caught up.
Yeah.
Let's see. John says, I can track them. We have reasons for everything. We'll get it straight in the off season. Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
And all it takes is a little bit of time, and really, John and I spent a lot of time.
Let's see here. Let's see.
Spent a lot of time talking in the off season before the No Name Nationals, trying to get this whole thing right. And that's the same thing we're going to do for what I guess it'd be No Name Nationals 2.0. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to call it.
The next one down, the one that you're on right now, I'm looking at my Yahoo email, and yes, he is in there. He was under, what is that, archive? Or I'm sorry, he went into spam. So, Michael, yes, I do see it here, and I just typed your name into the search. He's looking for some help on a 69 Cornet 512 in a 400 block. He has questions about camshaft selection and converter. Okay. Yeah. And I got his number here. Tell him, Michael, I'll give you a call. I just didn't see it. So I apologize for that, but I'll get on it and I'll give you a call.
John said it's going to be the second annual. I was just digging on the 2.0 idea.
Yeah.
Second annual No Name Nationals.
But then can you go 3.0, 4.0? Can you keep doing that, or?
Well, I mean, when you get to 110.0, no one's going to care. Like,
Right.
I mean, after the 50.0, I'm probably going to be dead and gone.
Yeah. You should start doing like stupid math stuff. Like when you get to the ninth one, or it's 3 cubed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 3
Or
cubed.
yeah, or three squared,
Like the
sorry.
square root of 81.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Square root of
exactly.
81 no name nationals. God, that's a heck of a t-shirt right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and David James is saying in and in two.
That's a good one. I like that one too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. You should call it like there or they are. You know what I mean? Like those ones. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Danny Boyd says that said my Corolla is running like butter. Sweet. Well, hopefully that
Nice.
some Wednesday night tech talk got you there. Hey, did you see the picture I put up for this Wednesday night tech talk?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like the hat?
Dude, it's so funny, dude. I dig it. The wife gets them as far as an update, and she posts with me tagging it on Facebook, and it's just funny. Yeah, dude, I have at it, man. Have fun with it. I got
Wow,
thick skin, man.
I was just trying to come up with something different every time. What we need to do is we need to start having some more guests on here. I know we talked about that, but we definitely need to have some more guests like Riley
Mm-hmm.
in the segment. I guess I think it would help it go by a lot quicker. Plus, you get another perspective on the whole hot rodding thing from a different avenue, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, let's see. Dallas going to Roman numerals in the next double deuce shootout. Roman numerals.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
You should have a double deuce shootout with Roman chariots.
That would be awesome.
When you spec out a cam for flat tappet, how much does lifter bore diameter change thing, if any?
Oh, it changes everything because you can, like, say a 904 or 937 or a 1 inch. That's the reason why Chrysler's always had an inherent advantage over pretty much everyone else when it was still everything was flat tappet, because it's got a 904 lifter. So your ramp rates can come in much faster. So your advertised duration at 50 can be a much smaller number. So therefore you have a much faster camshaft. So you can get off seat faster and get into the meat and potatoes of the airflow quicker. So yes, it means everything. You can be a lot more aggressive with it. In fact, a lot of people go all the way up to a 1 inch bore. And you can really get crazy with that kind of stuff, because you can get into camshafts that would basically rival rollers as far as speed and how fast they're opening and closing. But you're still going to gain more power with the roller. But yes, it makes a big difference.
Well, is that because there's so much surface area shared, so much more surface area sharing the load that you can come up with a faster ramp rate, or is that just because of the footprint
Footprint.
is larger?
Yes, exactly. They call it the foot. You know what I mean? So what, depending on the foot of it, how big it is, that way you're not turning, you're trying to come around the corner of the lifter, because they're not necessarily centered over the lifter, they're slightly askew. So the faster it comes up, it would go off the edge and basically just grind into it.
All right. Okay. All right. So we're talking about, everybody's talking about the name for the event. Kim's saying AHRA 2023 no name nationals event. John saying, nope, it's going to be this one. David James says, Ultra Dyne any good? I'm assuming yes, they're still around.
They're still around, but I'm kind of partial to comp cams now, because I work for them, and seeing what the type of stuff they have for checking. I think I'm trying to remember the Stapleton 482, I believe. They came in and he did a whole walkthrough on camshafts and how we ATCO them, and how we have 3 different types of ways to grind different ones. We have the brand new Landises, we have the CNC, and then we have the old Burkos that we can still do depending on how you want to do it. So I mean, they're around, they're still doing good. There's other cam manufacturers out there. Right now I'm just partial to comp cams, because I work there. So they're just an amazing company as far as how they do things, and it's accurate within less than a degree on all the lobes. So it wouldn't go out the door if it wasn't. So it's really good.
Well, so I just look at, like, if you have any type of automotive industry manufacturer that's still around today that made it past the 2008 mass exodus, where they all became conglomerates, right? Or got bought up or just parted out or whatever. But if they made it past 2008 to 2010, they're probably got a pretty good name behind them. Ultradyne used to be the camshaft to go to for modified production in the 80s, late 70s, right? That was the camshaft to have. You had to have an Ultradyne. Today, I would have to say that kind of camp company that's out there, they're the place to go for the heavy hitter stuff.
Yeah.
Bullet is a big one that people are using now. But there's nothing wrong with the stuff that's been around performing well for a long time. So
That's correct. Everyone, if they've been around, like I agree with you 100%. They've been around, they're doing it right. So it's anything's going to be good right now if it's still around.
Yeah. Let's see. What is the next one, Shane? Okay. I'll have one head next month and the other a few months after, then the intake eventually.
Yeah, that's Damien. He's the one that's I gave him a 318. And then he was kind of telling me, hey, I got this cam that I was going to get up on eBay. I told him no. I told him straight off, buy these heads first. Let's buy the intake second. Then let's build the camshaft around that, and also to what exhaust you're going to build, because that way we can start wave tuning things. As far as you really got to do that afterwards, but you can usually get pretty close, especially with headers in the intake. So that way we can design the camshaft around that.
Well, and the thing is like he's probably going to put this in his dart, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you got a free short block, right? It's a Magnum, I'm assuming you said.
That's right. Yep.
So the best thing you can do right now is buy the best heads you could possibly afford.
That's exactly what I told him to do. I told him to go get the, and he wanted to. That's exactly what I told him. I said to get the Performer RPM Magnums. They're an inexpensive head that flow really good, and then that way it leaves room for growth. You can take those and have them CNC ported. And on the 318, the factory flow rates on those, I think it's like 261, 270 right out of the box.
Well, that's going to 500 something horsepower.
Yeah. Well, the camshaft I was going to spec for him is a combination I've done a few times. In a 360, I called it my 450 horsepower one, but it actually made like 461 or 462. The one that I was going to spec for him is right in a 420 to 430 horse for a 318. And this is something you can drive on pump gas. You don't have to have anything crazy with it. And it's 650 carbs, so it works really good.
Let's see. Shane, Tony's been talking about valve overlap and cylinder head chamber shape on his channel. What is your opinion on this topic?
Oh, yeah, it's everything, because that's how you scavenge. I think a few were talking about the overlap triangle as far as the duration at 50, as far as in your LSA, and the scavenging effect. If you have a really good, Hemis have a really good combustion chamber in them, but they love their overlap. They just feed on it because it's such an efficient chamber, and if you can scavenge it, it works a lot better. And then on a wedge head, you got to, they don't nearly flow nearly as good. So you got to have a lot of scavenging. But there's also there's another one called wave tuning, and that's a whole different deal as far as when the wave hits the back of the valve, coming back from the intake, coming back from the exhaust, where the tube changes diameter, where it goes to the collector, and then also to when it exits, and then also to the pulse, where it comes at the bottom of the carburetor. So valve overlap does play. That is probably the single most important event as far as how intake closing is the best, is the single biggest event. But you got to have valve overlap 100% to get your head flow to flow correctly.
Well, then chamber is very important when it comes to detonation, right? And
Very
horsepower
so.
that you make.
Yeah, and that's why the LSs and I should say the Gen 3 Hemis, obviously they got twin plugs, but they're usually in the 22 to 28 timing range, no more than that. Some can get away within the 30s depending on your fuel, but usually you're in the 26 to 28 number for a Hemi because it works so well as far as the cylinder head shape. So
Generally the total timing number is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Generally tells you where it makes peak power. Okay.
Yeah.
You can put 900 degrees in there if you want. But
generally
about peak power, the lower the number, the more efficient the cylinder head.
Yeah, exactly. And then usually there's one rule I always say: you time for torque and you carburate for horsepower. So I'll just keep moving the timing to get the peak torque. And then once I find where the peak torque is at, then we start we start running it out the back door, kind of get the fuel mixtures, the air fuel mixtures correct. And then you can go up another couple degrees just to see if anything goes up. And if you get minimal gains, like say a horsepower or two, just bring it back down to the number and call it safe.
So Aaron Hinkley saying, I was debating bushing my olds from 921 to 841 for more lifter options. Should I stick with the 921?
What's the application? Is this like a street car or is this a race car? Because if it's just a street car, the 841 is going to be fine. Chevrolet's been doing really well on flat type of camshafts. For something what you're going to be doing on an olds, I mean, olds are they're really not an RPM engine either. So I mean, 841 would be just fine for what you're doing. You know, if you're going to drag, if this is a drag car or max effort car, man, open that thing up to a 1-inch and call it good.
Yeah, custom lifters. Oh, all right. Fab Race Mod Repeats says, if the name of an event takes, stick with and build a brand out of it. That's exactly what we're doing with No Name Nationals. It's not going to change. It's going to be the 2nd annual, 3rd annual, 4th annual, 5th annual until all of us die, right? So wherever that number, whatever your number happens to be, it's going to be the last one that you see. But I know that sounds a bit morbid, but that's the reality of it. And then we started that like with the inaugural No Name Nationals. That means the first running of.
Yeah.
It's not going to be much different than that for the entire time. So let's see. Dust Devil Garage is saying, CNC machinist here. Are they hiring out there? Huh.
I believe that Edelbrock's always hiring, you know, because when they moved, you know, there was, you know, they're basically just building out everything bigger here, so they're always hiring. So I would say yes, go for it, check it out. Go to I think they have a thing on the webpage where you can check to see what the openings are.
All right. So Michael Schmidt says, how do you determine if dual single carbs are sufficient for top end without just buying new carbs and experimenting? Is there some data I can measure? It's a sluggo on the freeway. Okay.
What kind of engine are we talking about? Because, you know, that's really going to determine this, because dual single carb. I mean, there's people who've done that on say a Slant 6 because the runner length is uneven, so they'll put a dual single barrel on them, and they work really good. Man, I don't know. You'd have to really see what kind of setup you have as far as RPM type thing. But
and so here's the thing: like generally, when you're trying to figure out the perfect ideal setup for especially when you're talking dual or single carburetors. All right, dual carburetors are always going to win over a single carburetor because it creates a barrel per each cylinder if you have an 8-cylinder, right? If you get a 6-cylinder, a 6-pack is an ideal setup. If you could actually split them amongst the cylinders, that would be the ideal way to go. That way you have one barrel feeding one cylinder, okay? It never really happens that way because you always have an intake manifold plenum. And the plenum allows it to mix and average across if you want. Individual runners is where you get your individual carburetor per each individual cylinder. But if you sat down and you wanted to do the math on your engine, okay, so say you got a 350 Chevrolet and you get a tunnel ram intake manifold from Edelbrock, they've already done the homework. The engineer at one point sat down and he determined, okay, this is going on a 350 Chevy, essentially anything from 283 to 400. The plenum volume in that tunnel ram is exactly about 283 to 400 cubic inch. You know, it'll fall in there. It's probably ideal for a 350, to be honest with you. And then you're going to have a little bit too much plenum and a little bit not enough plenum for that 400. But the math on that is you essentially want to take your volume of your cylinder, okay, and then times RPM, right? But I mean, I'm not the math guy. Shane's the math guy. I'm not going to go down, and I couldn't do it in public anyway, so I'd screw it all up. But the reality of it is, if you sat down and did the math, it's going to tell you at what RPM, how much CFM that engine is going to move, how much air it's going to move. And that's where you want to have the amount of carburetor and intake manifold that can support that.
Yeah. Also, too, when you're driving down the freeway, you're basically just off the idle circle, basically just on tip in. It's probably making 40 horsepower. So I don't see how dual carbs would basically just make the tip in just a little. It would feel more responsive, but you're basically every time you're throttling it, you're dumping twice as much air into it when the blades are opening that much. I don't think that you would see anything different on the freeway. Personally, you probably just see the mileage go down. Most tunnel rims are set up with a progressive system where they're run on the very front two, then they go to the second front, uh, carburetor two, and then they'll open up the secondaries at full throttle.
So John Wilburn saying here, the event will stay consistent. It's the content creators who should contrast as they do the changing and evolving. We do everything with purpose. So I'm just going to be straightforward here on a lot of this stuff, especially no-name nationals. Okay, for those of you old enough that were around when Coca-Cola changed from their original Coca-Cola Classic to New Coke, what happened?
I remember this.
No
It
one drank
stopped. Yeah, it stopped being
that
sold.
New Coke lasted like 3 minutes. Okay. And they went back to Coke Classic, which is now just Coca-Cola.
That's correct.
Okay. The No Name Nationals was successful on many facets, right? But the biggest thing that you take away from it is that the content creators enjoyed the experience that they had. I think it would be absolutely the dumbest move ever if we try to change anything the second year, right? Because you're going to be adding new Coke into the mix, and
Yep.
it is. We already found something that works. Now, can there be some refinements and improvements? Sure,
Yeah.
there can, and we're going to do those, and we're going to add, a couple little things in that. But the whole idea is to keep the maximum enjoyment within the event. It's always going to be about the content creator. We didn't do anything at the event that was for us at all. Well, I did sleep 4 hours every night, but that was about it. I mean, I
Yeah.
literally missed out on the car show. John missed out on half the burnout contest. I don't even remember the people that I talked to because I was so busy running around like a chicken with my head cut off. It was all about the content creator, and that's what made it fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with John on this. I'm not going to change anything unless it has to be changed. If somebody killed himself in the bathroom, we're probably going to have to put a door where you can get in from both sides, right? But
Right.
Other than that, though, the event was fantastic. I don't think there is anything that we should have to change or even consider changing until we run into that.
Yeah, it was great. Leave it alone.
I guess the one thing I would change it from my perspective would be like, I wish the haters would just go back to hating whatever they hated before.
Right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them now, and it's like, oh, this event wasn't successful. Well, how are you measuring success, dude?
Yeah.
I mean, we did all right for the first year event. You're gauging on spectator numbers. Well, that camera isn't focused on the pits. I mean, there was freaking people climbing all over the pits that place.
Yeah. I couldn't even keep him out of my. There were so many people around the slant the whole time. It was just like it was everything I could do just to keep answering all the questions. So yeah, it was an amazing event.
If you want to see how much the fan enjoyed being there, go watch the video with the trophies being given out. Okay, there's literally the most drunkenest fan guy in the front row while we're handing out trophies, right? And he's like, this place is so awesome. I love this freaking event. You guys did a great job. And we're like, thanks, dude. Can we get these trophies out?
He was standing right there too in that little circle pit, right? He was standing right there.
And that's how inclusive the No Name Nationals was for, like, you had your content creator standing right next to the fan, right next to, John and I who were putting on the event. I mean, it was a good time. And I knew it was going to be good because, see, that's the thing is, like, the content creator for YouTube is not accessible, right? Mm-hmm. You can watch them on a live or you can watch their channel and you think you might know them or whatever. But you throw drag racing in the mix. That's what made drag racing unique to all the other sports was they were accessible. The stars of the sport were accessible in the pits, and you could actually meet them and find out that if they're not a good person or they're a good person or whatever. But you got to meet them. And when we threw that YouTube in with drag racing, those two things went together like pizza and beer,
Right. Hot wings
fried
and
and
beer.
chicken.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, it was just amazing. Let's see. Aaron Hinkley says the event, it was a fun event. My boys and I were spectators. Let's see. Doug Narden says New Coke was a marketing genius.
I agree.
Take what everyone wants away, make it taste like the competition, then bring it back. People will quadruple down on it. And they did.
Absolutely. Pepsi did the same thing. They did a Pepsi Clear. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. But it tasted the same as regular Pepsi.
It did. Yeah.
The Junkyard Nationals. Yeah. And if that dude only had a little bit of a vision, he would understand what this is about. And I think he's actually coming around. John says we have a bunch of small changes planned, as all should be good. Most will go unnoticed because they're just making it run smooth. Exactly.
Yeah,
we're not going to change our new Coke. We're not going to change to the new Coke.
Yeah. All right.
Destroyer Eric says it goes together like peanut butter and ladies. Yeah. And, well, I think the only thing we're going to do is make the Destroyer 1320 burnout competition that much bigger, and then throw some peanut butter and ladies in there, maybe.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's 8:00. I want to get to it on this one. So today we're going to talk about converters. I've been actually getting a lot of question about converters and how to pick the right one for your street car, race car, let's call it. So what I normally do is I'm not going to give the guy's name away, but you get one of these things. This is your dyno sheet. And if you notice, this is your, let's get my hand correctly on the side here. This is your torque curve. This is your dip. He's running a dual plane. And then as the power comes up to right about here, most street cars, this is right at 4,500. So he's got a nice flat torque curve. So if this is a street car, what I would do is I would be at the 4,500 mark. So that way it could flash it up to, say, 47 to 5,000. Now he's going to be drag racing this, and we're going to be putting in a 204R transmission so we can go a little sloppier. So for this car, because of where the torque's at, I would put this in right at about 4,750 to 5,000. And what that's going to do is if you can see how flat the torque curve is, that's going to put him right at about a flash stall of about 5,500. And they were having problems on the dyno, but as far as you can see, the horsepower numbers, they're going to keep going up to 7,000 easily. So that's where I would be as far as RPM, but there also isn't another caveat. Weight of vehicle. Weight on this vehicle is 3,550 pounds. Now, the heavier the vehicle is going to make it stall more. The lighter the vehicle, it'd make it stall more. So with this exact same engine and something that weighed, say, 2,800 pounds, I would actually put a much higher stall in it. I would put it up in the 5,500 range, because you're not going to have as much load on the converter because it's lighter. With a heavier vehicle, you're going to go lower. So that now I'm leaning towards the 4,500 because of how heavy it is. Next thing I would look at is the combo of gear ratio and tire size. This one's going to be set up with 433 gear with a 28-inch tire. Now, his transmission first gear is a 274 or 276, I think is what 204R. So he's going to have a decent multiplication on that. So when you're picking a converter, there's a few factors. Obviously, it's called a torque converter for a reason, because it's going to convert torque. The biggest problem is that they classify torque converters with horsepower. You don't. You're doing it by torque. Whatever the peak torque is at, on any type of engine, you want to go, if it's a race car, just about 500 below that, so that way you can flash it back to that number, and then it'll actually flash higher. That way you stay on the converter longer, which you're going to get on the K value. You're going to get like a 1.2 or 1.3. That's where your multiplication comes in. This is where he's going to have a little advantage, is because once you get up over the stall, once that stator starts to move, you're going to lose that multiplication and you're going to have slippage. So you're going to have, like, say, an efficiency rating. Some are right in the 5. I've seen them as high as 11 as far as percent slippage. So yeah, they're
But
really high.
you probably don't remember the first time that we met, and my converter was stalling, well, pretty high, but it was slipping
Yeah,
at 39%. Remember, I
yeah,
figured that out, and I'm like, "There's something wrong here. I'm gonna get
yeah,
something wrong."
yeah.
But no, it was literally stalling, or it was slipping at 39%.
Exactly. So when you're getting converter, look, if you can get a torque number where the peak torque is going to be. You can usually figure that out pretty easily. You can get a dyno graph, or you can even do something on, like, on a rolling chassis. And then you get your weight of your vehicle. Obviously, the more weight, higher the stall. That it's going to actually create effective stall. The lower the weight of the vehicle, you're going to want to go with a higher stall right off the bat, because it's effectively going to make it a smaller stall. Then with the gear ratio and the tire size, this being a 433 with a 277 first and a 28-inch tire, with all those factors for this, with this car, with this setup, he is going to drive this on the street. So I'm going to try to be between that 4,500 to 4,750 in that range. So that way he can install this thing to 5,000. And then that way, when he's driving around town, he can just lock it up, say in third and fourth, and that will save the heat. So that's basically your basic idea of how to set up and torque converters. Now, there is a program, and don't trust the numbers you're going to see. Just look at constants, how things are actually just at the graph. So you can go into and get, like, your desktop dyno, and you can put in all the parameters, and it's going to get you close as far as not the actual numbers, but it will show you a graph, so you can kind of see where your peak torque is going to
The
be.
curve, yeah.
The curve, exactly. So you're going to want to find out where the peak torque is, and then just kind of play with it from there, from your gear ratio, tire size, and weight. So I hope that
So,
helps everyone out.
the way I always used to look at this is like I like to put stuff in like dumb people terms because I'm
Okay.
dumb, right? And so torque converter, and I really didn't dive into it until when I, like I said, we first met, my converter was stalling 39%. And
Yeah.
it was literally like an off-the-shelf converter I bought. It was for a 302 Ford with a bunch of nitrous, and I put it behind this 427 Cleaver motor in a car that weighed half as much. And then you start thinking about it. Why does this combination not work? And that's where I started to come up with, the dumb people terms for it. Because, all right, a lot of people don't understand it, but it's literally just like a slipping entity, and it's using the fluid pressure. Fluid is not compressible, right? So it's
Mhm.
using the fluid pressure to turn the other parts of the vein. It works kind of like a jet engine is actually how it works.
Exactly.
But the way I looked at it is this. Okay, the weight of the car, all right, so all of it would be like you pushing a wheel up a hill. Okay, say you're like the first caveman and you're pushing a stone wheel up the hill. The weight of the car is the size of the wheel. Okay, how big that stone wheel is, or what kind of rock it's made of. But the next thing is your gear ratio. Your gear ratio is how steep the hill is you're pushing it up.
Mhm.
Okay. And those two have to coincide with the engine combination that you have. Because it's like if you got a baby pushing a 200-pound rock up a super steep hill, it's going to get crushed, right?
Right.
It just can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's the way you kind of got to look at it. If you have a really huge dude that's like, let's say bench press 9,000 pounds, pushing a pebble up a hill that's is essentially flat, it's not going to do any good, right?
Mhm.
You have to get the two things kind of in the ballpark to where it's efficient, but yet still functional.
Yeah. And how you touch on something there that everyone should know, and that when you're saying that, it's kind of like you can't compress fluid, and that's the exact reason. It's actually you're crossing. It's called the right hand rule. If anyone's taken physics, let me see if I can get my hand in here. It's called the right hand rule. Is that right there? This would be one vector. This is your second vector, and this right here is your torque. So basically, you're sending fluid around the back of the turbine. It comes through the back of the fins, back through the center. It hits the stator. Now the stator's got a sprag in it for it's only one way. And what the fins do, go the opposite direction. So you're basically taking one vector, changing the vector, and then that's the torque, and the torque goes down the center of the converter. And once that stator starts to move, you lose that multiplication, and the torque starts to go down. The actual multiplication of torque goes down. So that's exactly how it works. I'll bring in some turbines and stators to kind of show you exactly how it works one time, and that way I can kind of hang them up so you guys can see, what you're looking at and how it's actually moving the fluid through there.
Well, Mohawk 62 says, we went as spectators at No Name Nationals, my son and I, and now I'm hooked. I'll be there as a participant next year. Thanks to all you guys and your inspiration. Hey, no problem. We were just trying to create a community for like-minded people, and it seemed to have worked out pretty well. Destroyer 1320. I have a 4,500 RPM Cohen converter. Are they any good? I never ever heard of them. It came in the car. That car must have been from the Midwest, I guess, because Cohen is a big converter place in the Midwest.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, that was the converter to have. So you're lucky you. It's probably they were good converters. Now, when I got out to the West Coast, what was the one out there that everybody was using? Dice.
I used Continental when I was out there.
Another good one. Yeah.
Continental. They were just like a little niche kind of race car shop, but they did all the buses converters for the big bus transit system out of LA. If you want us to look at that cone, you can basically send it into TCI and we can cut it open. And most people are going to use a 245 style of core, and that's like a Chevelle style of converter. And we can look at it, we can change it and adjust it as needed.
Hey, well, here's somebody that Mr. Buff Del Campo. He's in the house. They let you out of whatever kind of maximum security military prison you've been in. Buff, I hear pretty soon he's going to be coming back from Maryland, I'm assuming. So let's see here. I'm getting more questions.
No, I went through them pretty.
John Wilburn says Professor P is kind of like the guys I went to school with. Really smart. That's usually where the people that end up going to school are from. Aaron Hinkley, is it going to be 500 subs? We don't know, but John said every time someone asks, it goes up by 10 subs.
Yeah.
So now we're already up to 520 just for this episode.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If John's willing to do it, man, I think 500 for people who weren't there and 1,000. That way, everybody, you got to keep grinding. That would be kind of cool.
That does wear you down, though.
Oh, it does. No, I get it.
So here's a neat question. Destroyer Eric says, how long should I run my converter before I have it refreshed?
Heat will tell you that. How many times and it's gotten hot. That's basically what does it. Also, 2 Torrington bearings that are in there and in the condition of your fluid. If it's on a trans brake are what really, really kill it. Because every time you're on the converter, every second, that's 10 degrees. It's going to go up that fast. So if you're on it for 5 seconds, that's 50 degrees nearly instantly. And all that heat is right there in that converter because you're essentially putting on first and reverse at the exact same time and then just dumping the fluid. So it's essentially full stall. So the stator is completely stopped and moving.
And it's trying to compress that fluid, which it can't.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all turns into heat.
Yeah. And farther down there, he does say it is on a trans brake. That's going to be a hard one because obviously, it was in the car when you got it. I can tell you right now, I'm not sure the cost. It's worth it to have it cut open and looked at. I'm not sure what the cost is. Send it to slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Once again, that's slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. I'll get you in charge with some of the sales guys over at TCI, but we do this quite a bit. In fact, that's a lot of our business is cutting open converters and fixing converters. We do that quite a bit, or just doing a freshen up on them, taking out Torrington bearings. And then that's a good time to kind of freshen up the stall. If you want to go up or down, tighten it up, or if you're going to do a different combo, we can tighten it up for like nitrous and whatnot. So,
or you can just go the other way and take that motor out, put a 318 in it, and it'd probably be fine forever.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
But so Danny Boyd's saying that actually Buff helped build out the detention quarters at the International Space Station. That's where he's been hiding at. And I don't doubt that. But Buff is a secretive guy. He may be working for NASA through the Air Force. I don't know. And that's pretty cool that he's at the International Space Station. Maybe he's actually up there shooting spitwads out the port windows, right?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You can go to Clint's Street Machines right there. It's 3 down from that one right now. He says, TC, I had an adapter kit on order 4 months. Yeah, you know, I can tell you right now, most of the problems that anyone is having nowadays, it's not just TCI or anyone. It's basically getting steel or metal or any type of thing done. Also, too, it's hard to get things machined right now. Just in having people that are skilled laborers or anyone who's skilled in general, or people who just want to plain work. That's the hardest thing. It's not just it's not a cut on any type of company. It's just getting raw materials right now. But
well, we had that camshaft. I tried. Okay, so the Given F Friday 430 that I was doing, I called Shane when we were I was having a hard time finding a cam. I couldn't find one, right? So I called him and he said, yeah, there's supposed to be a load of cam cores coming in, July? July the
19th or something like that. Some ridiculous, arbitrary number.
The whole entire load did not come in.
Nothing. No, nothing. Just didn't even show up. No, and they just reschedule it. They just say, "Oh yeah, it's going to come possibly in December." You know, just like that.
So that's kind of what's going on. The one thing I did want to ask you about, I don't wonder if 2Hacks Jeff is still in here, because 2Hacks Jeff had a TCI C6 in his Larry T-Bird, which, you know, I don't know if I want to give him my T-Bird's cool name, the Wicked Chicken, but that thing went. It ate high gear right before No Name National, so he ended up showing up without a car, right?
Yeah.
And it was a TCI piece. Now I don't know if it was because we got the wrong converter with the wrong tranny or what. But,
yeah.
And usually it is. I think, you know, that's a 521 in a stroker 521 big block Ford in a car that's probably 4,500 pounds.
So it's heavy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I don't know if it was just too much converter and it was blowing through the converter and then it just made the fluid hot and burned the high gear out of it. Cause that's what it sounds like to me. It was pulling hard high gear and then
just lost it. If he's still in here, my email to work is Pulido. That's SPULIDO at edelbrock.com. I'm in the engineering department. I don't do any sales. I don't do any of that stuff, but I can get you in touch with the correct people. So that way we can see what we can do for you. And whatnot. And Destroyer 1320, he was saying that it was was it him?
What's that?
There was another question down here. No, it was actually Clint's. He was saying that it's the flex plate, and he said he's not mad, but he's looking for the flex plate. So Pulido at edelbrock.com. That's SPULIDO at edelbrock.com. I'll get you in touch with Jim Lakey. He's our guy at TCI. He does sales and he does tech. He's basically a one-man show over there, and he does a really good job. So I'll get you in touch with him, and then you basically can figure out where your order's at. Also, to the Destroyer 1320, I'll get you in touch with Jim also, so that way we can see what we can do as far as on that transmission.
Aaron Hinkley says, I was there Friday at No Name Nationals in the blue 66 Suburban. I remember you because you were like, hey, man, I just drove my Suburban in it. And you came from like a long ways away. Like, I don't remember what you said, Arizona, maybe. I don't know. And I'm like, holy crap, dude. And but it was like, I came to the No Name Nationals from Arizona by way of going to Montana or something. And it was like 2 different places the guy went. And I was like, holy crap, you drove 1,800 miles to come here? But I remember that guy being there. Okay, so Buff Del Campo says, how much pressure does a transcooler see?
Line pressure. So whatever your line pressure is on your transmission, that's exactly what it's going to see. So some of them run in the 120, some are all the way up into the 250 range. So it depends on what transmission it is, but it's going to see the absolute line pressure. And you can usually test that on a transmission. They'll have an 1/8-inch port that you can plug into and actually read the line pressure on.
Oh, here you go. Aaron Hinkley says Texas to Denver, then Missouri.
Wow.
That was his trip in a 66 Suburban. And that thing looked bitchin'. It was like my Buick powered Suburban. It was just like in regular kind of shape, pretty decent shape for what it was. And then
it's a driver.
he was cruising it all over.
Yeah, it's a driver. It's an absolute driver.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well,
while we're waiting for this, I actually had one today. When I got off work today, when I go to TCI, I get there pretty early, and I'm able to get off at about 3:30 or so usually. And I had the wife's car, and it's been acting a little funny, and so I went and put the wideband on it, and I started checking it, and I'm telling you, someone took the air fuel mixture screw, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but you can pop the hood and get on there. I know exactly where that was, and when it was here, I also wideband this thing and checked it all and had it all set up, and it was running beautifully. The wife's been having an issue with as far as fuel in it. She's having to fill it quite a bit. And I went and took it for a drive today, and I literally saw black smoke pouring out the pipe. I was trying to do the old Italian tune-up in it. It didn't help. And so then when I put the wideband on it, man, it was idling at like 8 parts per million. It was just crazy. So I went and looked at the air fuel mixture screw, and it literally was backed out all the way. And I had welded on a little stop there so it couldn't come all the way out. And it still had the spring on it, and it was all the way out. So it was basically all the fuel could go through that port at any given time. So it
just vibrated itself loose?
No, because I mean, it's possible.
Well, it's got a spring on it, so it's holding
exactly
all the time.
Exactly. And I put a spring on there that was a little tighter than normal because this is a driver that we drive constantly. And it's only been 2,500 miles since the last time I've actually checked that. And it went from, that's almost 6 turns out is when it would fall out. So it was 6 turns from where it was at. So it just doesn't make any sense. The simplest answer is usually the correct answer. Someone had to put a screwdriver on it and turn it out. That's the only thing I could think of. That's it. It doesn't make any sense.
You can probably still open the hood from the outside, right?
Absolutely. You sure can. You absolutely sure can. So it's just an odd one. It's the first time I've ever seen that. I've seen them come off like, say, half a turn or maybe, at the most 1 turn, but not 6 turns. And it was still, even at 6 turns, the spring was still touching and it was still tight. So just an odd situation. Yeah, exactly. One-eyed cat said sabotage. I agree with you 100%. Absolutely. It was sabotage. Something happened. She drives that thing to Costco and parks it, all around town. So it was just a weird one. But it runs beautiful now. So, yeah, runs great.
Well, Kim Fixes Thing says, line pressure is why you don't want to use plain old rubber hose on a trans cooler.
Absolutely. She is absolutely 100% correct because of that.
And you want to...
What's that?
Guilty of that. When I was a teenager, that was how we used to do it. It's like, well, most of the stuff I was doing was like cobbled stuff. It was like Buick 350 and a Chevette.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody makes train cooler lines for that. But when you cut train cooler lines in half and put some rubber hose in there with 2 hose clamps on each end, you are golden.
Yeah, I learned right off the bat that you got to put a little bubble on when you cut the line because I did the same thing. It went into the train, into the the radiator, came back out.
The rubber hose right off.
And it just kept blowing it off, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on, But it was that was eons ago. But yeah, you got to put a little bulge on that thing so when you clamp down, that you can't just pressurize it and pop it off.
Yeah. Yep. You flare it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Doug Narden says I had a carb that would adjust itself with vibration. The springs behind the screw didn't have enough pressure to hold adjustment. Had to stretch spring out slightly.
Yeah, that's exactly how I did it when I built this carb. I'm not new to it. It was just a very, very odd situation. We've had that car and we've put 10 to 15,000 miles on it since we've owned it. And it's never been more than, now this carburetor was 100% build. I took it and drilled out the bushings on it, and I put in bronze bushings on it, so that way there was no leakage on that Holley 1920 style carburetor. So that thing had to have, if there was vibration, there was a lot of it in that car. If we ever take it to No Name Nationals, when you start that car up, it's as smooth as glass. You can put water on it and it doesn't even vibrate. So it's
Well, this is the
hard.
wife's car, right?
Yes,
And your wife's car has an awesome name, the Creamy Beaver.
Creamy Beaver.
And
Absolutely.
where did you get that from? The Smokey the Bandit?
I don't know exactly where she got that from. I'll ask her. But yes, I believe it was that was Smoking the Bandit was Little Beaver, wasn't
Oh,
it?
Little Beaver, that's right.
Yeah, it was Little Beaver. But it was just funny because we always used to make beaver jokes, just stupid beaver jokes. And I remember when she took it for the first time, she went for a drive. I have a little video of it on there of, when she took it out, and I say, "What's the name of the car?" And she goes, "Creamy Beaver," because it's like that cream covered car. It's just funny. So,
Hey, here's 2 hacks, Jeff. What are your thoughts on the new Edelbrock 4150?
it's going to dominate all. That thing is an amazing, amazing carburetor. I can't tell you some stuff that we've done, but I can tell you that every person who's used that, and there's some big names that have used that carburetor, every time it's made more power. And the biggest thing is that how the circuits talk to each other. So all the emulsion tubes, you're going to have a very, very flat, all the way across the RPM range type of power. So you're not in your air fuel mixtures aren't going to really, change much. I can't go into a lot of details on some stuff on what we've tested, but I can tell you that it makes so much even power. If you're going to have this thing at, say, 2000 RPM, it's going to be at 12.8. At 7000 RPM, it's going to be at 12.8. So it basically is the most stable carburetor I've seen.
Hey, and 2 hacks, Jeff, we were just talking about you, so your ears must be burning. Throw Shane an email, and he can get you in touch with somebody there at TCI to get a look at that C6, the high gear.
Yeah, Pulido@edelbrock.com. Once again, that's Pulido@edelbrock.com. I'll be in the office tomorrow about maybe 10 o'clock. I gotta go to Olive Branch first. So yeah, send it over there and I'll get you in touch with whoever you need to. We'll get you taken care of.
Clint Street Machine says, I love those things from what I've seen. So the Edelbrock 4150.
Oh yes. Yeah, it's basically take everything. Imagine a $3,000 billet carburetor that you can buy for. I'm not even sure what this thing's costing, but it will do the exact same thing as that. Even on circle track, drag racing, street car, we've taken that carburetor right off of an engine that was making 700 horsepower. Literally picked it up by the stud, dropped it onto a stock 350 that was on a Suburban, and it ran perfect, exactly, with no adjustments. It was just an amazing carb.
So Nicholas R says, I installed an aftermarket Trains cooler kit at work with a rubber hose. It felt so wrong, but it's what the customer wanted. It was a truck, so I hope I don't have to clean up the mess when he tries towing.
Right? Yeah. Even if it's load rated hose, man, I'm telling you, it scares me also. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, I like using. I tell you what, I'm on to a kick now that I started doing with my race cars, which was AN lines for transmission cooler lines.
Yep.
And then you just AN them, and you're
Mm-hmm.
done forever.
On the Creamy Beaver and on the Green Dart, if you were to come and look at both those cars, it has AN fittings on both ends, because that way I don't have to mess with it ever, and
Yeah.
that it's done.
Yep. So let's see here. Doug Narden says, my winter hat is made from genuine beaver pelt. The ladies love to pet my beaver at the brewery. Well, check it out. Back in the 90s, there used to be a band called Primus.
That's right. My little brown
And
beaver.
they had a song called Winona's Big Brown Beaver, and it would bite people.
That's right. That beaver eats Taco Bell.
Them guys, they made a comeback album not too long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I can't remember what it was called. Oh, man. They had a song that was the title song from the album, and it was typical Primus. I mean, it literally had 5 words in the whole song. And they kept saying the same thing over and over again, but it was just so freaking catchy that you find yourself singing it, and you're like, that was the corniest, weirdest song, but it's so cool.
Yeah. I saw them in the last time I saw Primus in concert. It was the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory songs. He remade all the songs for the Willy Wonka, and
Uh-huh.
it was a very odd, strange. I mean, seeing Primus back in the 80s and 90s, and they're like this punk rock, punky style of ska, whatever music you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
But then to see him up on stage doing like Primus, if that's a
Dance.
word, type of Willy Wonka songs, it was actually really cool. So yeah, that was the last time I saw them.
Let's see. Michael Schmidt says, "Is there a benefit to using a magneto on mild performance six-cylinder, or would it just be eye candy? Is a magneto is practical for the street?" I would have to say no.
You're
Um,
correct.
the magneto generates its own electricity,
Mm-hmm.
so you could literally your alternator could die and you could still drive home. But I wouldn't call that practicality. There's a reason why the magneto ended at about 1950s, right? And that's because the breaker points ignition was much more suited for daily driving use, right? You
Mm-hmm.
could go in and get a set of points. If you've ever had to take one of these magnetos apart, there is a lot of stuff inside of it. It has a little generator in there. It's actually like an alternator, I think. And then it also has a set of points, but you got to disassemble the whole dang thing to repair stuff inside that alternator or inside that magneto. So the breaker points was a much better deal.
Yeah.
Let's see. John Wilbur says there are, or at least were, cooler kits that came with hose. Yeah, with AN hoses.
I'm not sure. There's got to be at least some. I have to plead the fifth on some of this stuff. I can't really talk about some stuff I'm doing. So.
Oh well, I'm just talking about that. He's just saying that there's trans cooler kits that came with hoses, and I'm assuming he means the braided stainless steel hoses with AN fittings on them.
Yeah.
You used to be able to buy a whole kit from. Oh, I know that they're big on the diesel stuff now, where you get the whole kit with the lines. But I want to say TCI used to make the best damn cooler in the business. I have one.
Mm-hmm.
It actually had a fan mounted on the cooler, so in
Yeah.
case it did start to get hot, that fan would automatically come on, and it had its own thermostatic switch and everything.
Yeah, it was really good. I got one in the garage. It works
Do
awesome.
you? Yeah, and for a towing application, that thing's the bee's knees. That's
Mm-hmm.
a hot piece to have.
And if it's ever getting hot, you just pull over the side of the road, put it in neutral as far as on my Chryslers, let the pump run, and that fan kicks on, and it brings on that training temperature fast.
Like in seconds, yeah. I have it on my race car, and it works good because what I would do is go up on the converter on the line. I don't have a trans brake, so I'd be on the foot brake, and it would only stall to like say 2,800 RPM. But what I would do is I like to be the first one in, and it has nothing to do with really anything on the starting line. It has everything to do with me wanting to get my position in the lights,
Yeah.
right? And it takes a little bit of time to do that. I can't just roll in there and bang, ready to go. I want to be able to feel the depth that I'm in the lights,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll bring it up on the two step. But so okay. Andy says I can't wait to get my hands on a pair of VRS 4150s. I would love to do a back-to-back dyno test versus my Dominators.
Yeah. What size are your Dominators? I did a 1050 style. So yeah, but I can tell you right now, we've done the testing, and it works so much better on everywhere. It's like having, most carburetors have like either a 2-circuit, 3, and then like some of your, sportsman guys have like a 4 or 5-circuit. This thing it's got 4 different circuits on it, but they all talk to each other, so it's awesome.
My name is Bud.
Right.
Claypool.
Mm-hmm.
Sailing the Seas of Cheese. I had that album.
Oh yeah. Oh, Billy is asking 3 down.
Bill McKiska?
Yep.
Okay.
He's asking about the Mopar Performance RT and Magnum heads compared to stock or other aftermarket company options. I'm not sure who made these for them, but a lot of the aftermarket Mopar stuff is made by other companies. I do know that Edelbrock did make a lot of the parts for Mopar, so this could be one of them. So they, Mopar has their own specifications that they want for things, but they really are comparable. So you can get like say a Magnum head, like a Performer RPM, and that's going to work just as well, if not better, than the old school RT Magnum heads. So yeah, they're good heads right off the bat.
Let's see here. Danny Boyd says, doing things right is so 20th century.
Right? Yeah, have you noticed that? That's funny he says that, because it seems like ever since the turn of the century, the quality of work is less. When you used to go to a car show and cars were just gleaming and just all this work into it, and all of a sudden it just went down to like the rat rods. Remember that? Like in the early 2000s, it was just how crappy can I make something work? And now I kind of see in this, like with the race cars too. It's like you go and see a race car back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, they're immaculate. Nowadays they're just like hacked together. Like, wow, you're really going to get in that car and go 180 miles an hour? That's
and
crazy.
bet your life on it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's see. Nicholas R says it couldn't have been more than $50 out the door to add hard lines, but some people are just that cheap.
It's true. I agree with you. That is amazing.
Let's see. Nirvana actually played. So they're talking about bands, I guess, from that period where there's rubbing elbows with people. I tell you what, when I was in San Diego in 94, 5, and 6 was like, it was 95 and 6. It was like the mecca of the ska punk revolution thing that was happening at that time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I remember going to, there's a bar at Pacific Beach called Fibber McGee's, and they used to have let's see who was playing there. I saw Jewel playing there. She was living in a car
in the van. She was in that blue van.
Yeah, and she was playing at Fibber McGee's. And then I'm like, oh, well, let's go check out and see what's going on down at the corner bar. And that's the first time I saw a ska band live, and it was Real Big Fish and No Doubt. No Doubt playing at a corner bar in San Diego. Yeah. No, it had to be 94, 95, early 95 maybe. But, Doug's out of here. All right.
Yeah, I'm reading down. There's really not much.
Yeah, John says the problem isn't doing things right. The problem is people who think that they determine what is right.
Yeah, exactly. Or good enough. That's the problem. Is what's good enough? Let's just get it down the track.
Let's see.
Yes, I have too. Have you ever been to SEMA and seen some of those welds that they put, and they'll actually powder coat them or paint them with those welds underneath it? It's amazing. Like, you're like, wow, that's crazy. Mostly on the lifted trucks, it's just terrible.
Well, here's one that. So, Dust Devil Brian saying that pretty paint don't make a car fast, and that's 100% true, right? And I'm kind of torn right now. I want to run Southeast Gas or Superstock with my Superstock Buick. The problem is that they require you to have nice paint because the car has to. They wanted it to be like 1967, and in this case, the car would have only been 4 years old. So I have to do a restoration on a car that nobody makes restoration pieces for, right?
Right.
And it's like, where do I want to spend my money at? I need to buy like a $3,000 rear end to put in this thing, or I got to build one. And there's no way it's going to be relatively cheap for any of it. Now, I can't paint it myself, and it would look like a bag of crap. But I think I'm really starting to dig the idea of keeping the patina and then either, because I've done stuff where you bring them back to life. And lacquer paint is actually pretty easy to bring back to life, but it's just like polishing metal, right? You start off with your green scrubby pad, your not a Brillo, but green Scotch Brite, and you scuff it somewhat up. And then you start polishing, and you can bring it back to somewhat some pretty decent looking stuff. But this thing sat outside for 40 years. I'm assuming. I don't know. It's got a abandoned sticker on it from 2000. So it was already deemed abandoned in 2000. So how long did it sit before that?
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
no idea. But I know just to get it running for the Buick Nationals this year, I think I'm going to leave the same paint on. I'm going to try to bring it back.
Yeah.
But
But when
paint is literally there to keep it from rusting.
I
You're
guess
dipping it in oil.
I guess what I should have said is when I said the cars were beautifully, I should have said beautifully put together. I agree with you. Pretty paint doesn't make a car go fast. 100% you're correct. But well engineered vehicles look much better to me than one that's got pretty paint on it. And it just seems like the engineering level of how people are putting these together are even worse and worse and worse. It seems like, but that's once again just my own personal opinion.
Oh, dude. Danny Boyd saying he saw Weezer in 97. That would have been a good concert. I have certain bands from the 90s, like he was talking about Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam and stuff, but there's certain bands to me that I think really embodied that time frame. One of them being Weezer. Another one that I really liked was Cake.
Yes. Cake was amazing in concert. Yes.
Dude, that was such a good freaking band, man. I wonder what
Yeah.
happened to them guys.
Dude, he went like Cake, and then he like, what was another one? Presidents of the United States of America.
I love
Remember
them
that?
guys. I saw them in concert like 4
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. He came up on stage, and was it Cake or was it Presidents? I couldn't remember. I think they were playing together, but he literally only had 2 strings on his guitar, 2 strings, and he played the whole concert with just 2 strings.
That might have been Presidents. I
Yeah.
saw them in Biloxi, and it was like I don't know. I guess it was an upstairs venue above the gambling arena in Biloxi, right?
Yeah.
And when the show started, my wife had never been to a live concert before ever, and bang, the Presidents open up with like "Video Killed the Radio Star" or something, right?
Yeah.
People were freaking jamming out so hard the tiles started falling off the ceiling and into the gambling arena below.
That's
Right?
awesome.
And they had to stop the show just to be like, "Hey guys, calm it down. We don't want you falling through the floor." And we're like, "F you, the Presidents are rocking the place," But my wife was in love with live shows after that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I mean, she literally went in for one of the best live shows she could have done. The Presidents were killer. They were good, man.
Drop it down 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Is this
Are
one?
beehives any good? Yes, they're amazingly good. In fact, what makes them so good is that on a normal spring that's like say a conical, as the coils pack, you're going to have a pressure that's going to come across and it's going to come up and it's going to basically kind of do this number. Where on a beehive spring, because you're going to have it's going to be a progressive rate, so it's going to ramp in and then slowly ramp up with very little step as the coil binds kick in, and it's a much more stable spring because it's not in a line, so your harmonics and as far as the frequency of the spring has much greater range, so that way you're not going to have as much valve balance and whatnot. So the beehive spring also too, it allows for a much smaller retainer, so you're having to move less weight, and then the spring at the top is obviously smaller, so you're gonna have a much lighter mass as far as with the valve, the lock, the retainer, and the spring that's actually moving. So it's an amazing spring. So yeah, if I always try to put beehives in anything I can if I can get away with it.
Yeah, I put beehives in that super stock Buick motor, and
Yeah.
Shane was the guy I was calling. I was like, "Man, I got such a mixed up combo here. I'm trying to figure it out." And he's like, "Well, dude, you can," because I was freaking out what it was about. I had dual springs, so I was going to have to pull the inner spring out to break it in, and then put that spring back in. But a Buick has like, it's a fixed valve train, right? It's on a shaft. And it becomes a giant pain in the butt when you're talking about taking one, like the keepers and retainer off, and that thing's still attached to the motor. And so I didn't really want to do it. And so he was like, "Man, if you went to a beehive, you wouldn't even need a second spring." Like,
That's
oh,
right.
yeah, you know what? And then I started looking at the retainer mass was like much less. And I dropped like what was it, 30 grams of weight off of each individual valve.
That's a movement. So that's, this is just a rule of thumb, that every basically gram, you're going to gain another 100 RPM, usually. Not for everything. Obviously, there's so many factors involved in that. It's just kind of a rule of thumb. So 30 grams means that you're cutting down so much mass as far as valve balance and whatnot. So that's a good number.
Well, then because you're cutting down so much mass, you can go to a smaller spring, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of benefits to having that lighter spring. You
Yep.
run just as much spring as you need, right?
That's right.
That's the ideal situation. All right, man. We're still going on concerts. How is this possible? Hookline Efficient says it's rocking Black Flag now.
Yeah.
I like that stuff too.
Yeah, me too. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the one I got into for a little while there for a few years? Man, it's like an Irish punk band. I think they were Irish. I don't know, but they had. Man, I can't remember the name. I'm gonna have to look real quick now.
Is it Flogging Molly?
Flogging Molly.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah, I like them. I've actually been kind of going outside the U.S. for new stuff. For punk rock, I really been digging Amy and the Snifflers and the Chats. They're from Australia, and I've really kind of been into this Czechoslovakian grindcore, whatever it's called, Gudalax. They're amazing. And check it out sometime. Watch the videos. It's funny.
Well, I got lucky. I was stationed over in Australia, and there was a lot of music over there that was from the greatest. Because in my opinion, greatest era of music was probably like 70 to 85, 89, somewhere around there. That's when you had all the great stuff that came out. Now the grunge era was all by itself. They did their own thing, right? But 70 to 85 is where you had like massive good music, and it wasn't just like one genre. It was like across the board, right? And but rock and roll down there, the one that I got into was they had one called the Angels, right? A band from Australia called the Angels that was really awesome. And they couldn't be called Angels here in the United States because there was already a band called the Angels that had, hey, Mr. Postman, look at me, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So they were called Angel City, and it just never caught on over here. But, man, it was freaking awesome. And then when I was on deployment, I ran into this guy from, like, I don't know, Denmark or something, and he taught me about this band called Peer Gunt, right? And it just sounds like the most raunch name that you ever heard of. But
Peer Gunt.
Yeah, but they had a song called The Backseat of a Trans Am, and it was freaking right up there with anything great from America around 90, 91. So it'd been like right up there with Jackal and stuff at that time frame. But yeah. All right. So everybody's on music now.
Yeah, right.
Music alone. We're doing live here. Anybody got any tech questions? I know nothing about Kurt Cobain's guitar. I know I zero.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. Like I say about my wife's car and that whole spring thing. I'm actually going to change that spring out just in case. But I got to tell you that it just keeps burning in my brain. Even right now, I'm still thinking about that. How does that thing turn 6 turns out? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what. When you go to put your new spring on there, hit it with just a dab of clear fingernail polish. And that'll be just enough tension to keep it from backing out, but it also will not be anything like Loctite, right?
Yes.
You can literally take it right out, and the gas will, if you did take it out, gasoline would just freaking destroy it, but it'll keep it from wandering. And I used to do that on RC cars. When I was stationed in Japan, I was 20, because I wasn't old enough to go to the bars, but I couldn't have a car either.
Yeah.
So I got into RC cars really big, and they only have one piston, right? And it would vibrate like mad because you only got one piston. And it would back all the screws out of those things, and they'd fall out, and your engine would eventually fall off, and everything would just fall off this thing. Just run it enough, and it'd fall off. So I figured out that fingernail polish screw thing, and it worked great. I ended up keeping all my screws, and
I'll try that out. I'll give it a shot. Yeah, this on this one, she on her valve cover didn't have a PCV valve. It basically just had a breather on it with a secondary cap, so that way you can kind of make like it would allow it to breathe. And it just had one of those hoses that went to the air cleaner, but it was on this side of the air cleaner, not on vented, so it was basically pulling it through. So I put a valve cover on there that has a PCV valve, and this is actually what led me to start checking it, is because whenever you put a PCV valve on, you're going to tend to run just a little lean because you're going to be pulling in a little bit of vacuum on it. So I was getting ready to do that, and that's why I had the wideband on it. But man, it was just nice. That was just, I just can't get off of it. So I'm going to check it out and see what I can find out. But that thing runs so smooth. I'll take a video of how smooth it runs. It's hard to imagine that it would vibrate that far out.
Oh, John Wilbert says his hometown is so cool that Hank Williams Sr. died as soon as he left there. So,
That's a good
man,
one.
that's pretty cool. They kept him alive. So Two Hacks Jeff is saying a tech question: if Keith Richards drove a Hemi Super Bee, what would be the first part to break? Also, who would last longer, the Super Bee or Keith Richards? I would say Chryslers used to rust out pretty bad in the 70s. I remember seeing B bodies that had rust all the way up the quarter panels, like something horrid, right? And we used to have a running joke in the middle of the rust belt that a Chrysler is the only car that would rust in the middle of the windshield, right? So I would have to say Keith Richards would outlast the Super Bee. But just to make things clear, if Keith Richards drove a Hemi Super Bee, the first part to break would be Keith Richards. Yeah, I'm sure that dude's so ancient he would pull his arm on a socket rolling the gears. Yeah,
that's funny.
Hook, Line, and Fishing wants to know if you ever got me that Hot Rod magazine. No, we just haven't had time. I've been freaking jumping through my own butt, and it's actually my part or my fault because I haven't stopped by Shane's place to do that, and he could probably just mail it to me, but he doesn't have to. I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's right up there.
Let's see. Clint Street Machine says, we all know Keith Richards is immortal.
Right. That's a funny one. Keith Richards. Oh, hey, 1929 A-Bone pickup says that the lawnmowers have a cork washer and mixer screw on them from moving. Yes, I actually have one of those on there. So I have the cork washer, then it has a small little tiny washer, like an actual steel washer, then a spring. So it's got both of them. And the reason why I did the cork washer on there is I was trying to eliminate all vacuum leaks possible, because those threads on those things, there's not much thread on this type of carburetor. It's a Holly 1920. So I put the cork washer on there just to help with the vacuum leaks. So yeah, it's got one on there right now.
And John Wilmer says, I have 1 foot of a 69 Super Bee. That's more than is left of Keith Richards. Danny Boyd says, no one super famous went to my high school. Couple or few NFL players. Dude, you went there. That makes it famous.
Right?
My school was so small. I mean, and Two Hacks Jeff can attest to this. My school was so small that there was only 86 of us in the graduating class, right? Wow. So there's nobody came that was famous really out of my high school. I guess the closest we had was Tom Mintz lived next door to my grandparents, and that was about the coolest thing. He drives the Max D monster truck.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, we got about 7 minutes left, 6.5 minutes left. Did you go to school with anybody famous, Shane?
Yes, quite a bit. I went to school with I don't like dropping names though, but yeah, I did go to school with I come from Poway, California. If you just Google Poway, California, graduating anywhere in the 1992 to 94, there's a lot of famous people that graduated from there in that time. So yes, I just don't like dropping names. I'm not that guy.
Man, well, you know what? That would have been. Did you go to school with the lead singer from Sublime?
No, I don't think so. He was from Long Beach area.
Long Beach? Oh.
Mm-hmm. Just got signed up for the
Clint
PRI.
Street Machine says he just signed up for PRI. Anyone here going? I actually like to frequent PRI, but
Mhm.
I think this year I may pass.
Really? Why?
I can. Well, if I do PRI, one, it's $2,500 for me to do it.
Oh, to
Right?
do it. Oh, I thought you meant just go for it. Like you're
Oh
just
no,
gonna
I
go.
can go up there. I'm just kind of sucks being there by yourself. And now John's saying Dallas, if I wanted to do PRI, I bet Cope and I would jump in. But I can do if I got my normal AHRA booth there. Um, I can get it in as many people as I wanted. And maybe that's what we should do is like see if we can cram pack PRI with YouTube content creator, automotive content creators, right?
Yeah, make your own booth just for content creators. That'd
Yeah,
be
that
cool.
would be pretty bitching because I mean I'd have to pay for my booth, but then everybody that would go in there essentially would be for free. So they show up and their name, their badge and stuff is going to be there, and you're there for the AHRA. Maybe we should just flash mob the PRI.
That'd be cool. Yeah,
It would be kind of cool.
that'd be a good one.
No, Brian, there is not anything that's really special. You just need to find somebody who's registered, and then they can get you in for free.
Yep.
Me, I'm automatically because I have ties to SFI. Essentially, can go for free. If I want a booth, that's not free, and it's far from free. It's like I said, $2,500 or something for my booth, and it was like a 10 by 10 square, and I just don't see the return on investment for that thing. I just never have.
Yeah.
You know how many T-shirts that is for me to sell? The $2,500 worth.
That's a lot.
That's I sell the T-shirts for $20. That's over 100 shirts I'd have to sell. So
That's a lot. Yeah. Oh, the one right below that. He says he's class of 93, 1929 A bone pickup. So am I. Right underneath that one.
Oh yeah, I did see that. In your class of 93 then?
Yep. Class of 93.
Clint Street Machine says, I signed up for the Media Pass Valid Automotive YouTube channel qualifies. Sweet.
Oh, there you go.
$40 to join PRI first. Like I said, I'm in it for free. And if I wanted to, get a booth, I could get everybody here for free. I just have to sit down and put everybody's name in. But the thing that I don't like about PRI is that it is very, very packed.
Yes.
Okay. And I am not good. I'm not a good people person. I mean, I'm good one-on-one. I am not good in a crowd. And a lot of it is I don't trust the people behind me. And there's always people behind you at this damn thing. Yeah. Always people behind you. And Brian, there you go. Let's see. Oh, the one-eyed cat says he's here for class of 83.
Wow. Good job. Keep on kicking, man. That's awesome.
We should all pitch in for a No Name Nationals PRI booth. How about I just get the HRA booth and then we can all go and hang out there in No Name National style.
Yeah, the No Name Nationals is going to become its own little thing too. So yeah, I believe that's going to be a big thing.
All right. Well, so we're down to a minute and a half left of this 2-hour tech talk that got sidetracked into music and whatever else. Normal stuff that we get sidetracked in. But anything you need to throw out there for everyone?
Well, actually, I do. I have a Chris Cox and a Michael Gray. They're going to be. They sent in email questions, and I will get to those as soon as
Chris
I can.
Cox just want you to spec him a camshaft.
Yeah, but I didn't see it until just now. So yes,
you said it last week.
Yeah, I know, but I just didn't see it. because
Oh,
there's you have inbox, you have unread, you have shared, you have trash, you have spam. They have like 4 different areas to go and look for camshafts. So
yeah.
tell them I'm sorry, I just didn't see it.
Man, that's Fab Race Mod Repeat. All right. Well, I guess so the end of the AHRA season's coming up. I got one race this weekend at Jeffers Motorsports Park, which looks to be a pretty big event that they're to do that they're putting on out there. So it's a racer appreciation weekend. So I got nostalgia pro stocks and all kinds of stuff. It's everybody pays $15 entry fee or a $15 gate fee. That's it, and it's free to race. So, and then the following weekend, I'm going to. Well, no, I'm sorry. November 5th is the last race of the season for me. Northeast Dragway out there with Chris Cox, Fab Race Rod Repeat.
Okay.
So that'll be my last event for the 2022 season, and then it's start planning for the 2023 season, which includes the No Name Nationals. So John and I will start having things come out here pretty soon as we start planning it out and developing I guess a way ahead. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, anything else, Dane?
No, I've got basically just more content coming up on the 68 dart now that we're coming into winter. I just got to get the garage arranged so I can start getting back on the desert dart. I definitely want to go road racing next year. So that's my goal with that. I'm going to race that 68 dart and some road races.
What are you doing? Like Spectre? Was it
Um,
Spectre
I-
316 or whatever it was? And there was a bunch of them like that that were road race rally kind of deal things.
yeah, this one is they have a cone dodging class here, but then they have like there's another one. I can't remember the name of it. I'm trying to remember the name, but you go to different tracks and you go to like say um, the Ozarks, and then there's another one in Philly or so you're kind of going around and you get to race some of these classes, and it's like I'm going to race the muscle car stick shift class. So yeah, it's really cool. So I'm going to try that out. Give it a shot. I'm going to try something different than drag racing. Drag racing got to a point where I'm having fun. Yeah, SCCA. There's SCCA. One Eye Cat said that. There's another one too. I can't remember the name of it, but that way I can actually go to some tracks, and then they have another. I think the finale ends at the Road of Americas in Texas. So that'd be fun.
Huh. Well, I haven't. You lost me at road racing.
Imagine drag racing,
Only
but
turning.
you're turning and you get to go down another drag strip, another straightaway. So you get to like every lap is like 3 drag races and a bunch of deacceleration. So I'm going to
Man,
give it a go.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna throw this out there. Don't forget, as we prepare for No Name Nationals, there are lots of great AHR events you guys should plan to make. The AHRA is our friend,
I
and I
agree.
plan on Shane and I are going to be doing a match race madness this year in Iowa. So
Yeah,
that one's going to be bitching. All
yeah,
right. Well, I'll see you all next week.
yeah. And
And
once again, if I didn't get to it, I swear to you, I will. Slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Once again, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Just give me a little bit. I'm a little busy right now because I do have SEMA and PRI coming up, and that is basically where we drop a lot of our parts. So I'm working really hard to get some of those parts out to you guys as far as new product. But I will get to you. I'm just in a little bit of a crunch right now in these next few weeks, but I will get to it.
all right. Well,
Awesome.
we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
All right, you guys take it easy. Thanks for showing up.
We're out.
Peace.